I have to admit this. Maybe I shouldn't admit this, but I have to admit this. And maybe I'm erring in my responsibilities of bringing you the latest in terms of the news of the Colts, the news of the Pacers, the news of Purdue, the news of Indiana, the news of the Indians, the news of the Fever. My apologies if there's a team right off the top of my head I just forgot. But maybe I should admit this, but I will.
IndyCar?
News of IndyCar. News of the Speedway testing going on today. It's like 35 degrees outside. Or maybe that was yesterday. But nonetheless, I feel like now I got bit a year ago, or the last 2 years, actually. I've been bitten, and I learned my lesson. Okay? Each year, when the Colts schedule is released, and we know about schedule release day, it's a national celebration now. It's a national party, and each team's social media department works feverishly to put out the most creative and innovative and hilarious video to let you know their schedule. And then the Colts do one, and they violate some sort of a trademark clause or whatever else, and all hell breaks loose. But it is my belief that when and I've been burnt by this, thus my belief now in particular, it's hard for me, as I mentioned before, no one cares personally about this aspect of it, but it's hard for me to go on vacation in the summertime, to take like an actual vacation because of the IndyCar schedule. That's kind of my peak season, if you will. So when I try to take a vacation, I intentionally look at the Colts schedule and look where their bye week is and try to take it then. Or if that doesn't work, pick a game where I feel like, okay, nothing's going to happen that week. This is the most innocuous game on the schedule. A year ago, I think was it Minnesota last year?
Yep.
The beginning of the year, I'm like, yeah, Minnesota. What's going to happen when the Colts play Minnesota? I mean, come on.
Gets flexed to Sunday Night Football.
The helmet tap.
The week before.
The week before. So the Colts all of a sudden have a quarterback position change. It's a primetime game. You got a new quarterback starting. Their big, promising top 5 pick is now relegated to the sidelines because of all that, right? The year before that, I can't remember what it was, but something big happened. So this year I said, okay, fine. It's going to be the bye week, even though the bye week is literally like a week before Thanksgiving, and anywhere you want to go, unless you're going to Florida, it's going to be cold. But nonetheless, my confession is this. It is our job, it is our duty, it is our obligation, it is our professional line to talk professionally about each and every game on the Colts schedule. Is this a bye week? It feels like a bye week. It feels like the only reason that nothing so far big has happened and exploded in terms of news going into this game with the lowly Tennessee Titans. The only reason seemingly that hasn't taken place is because this isn't the week that I plan my vacation. But when you look at and you try to figure out who's in, who's out, what's the latest on some of the players that are injured. I mean, we know that Shavarius Mooney-Ward is out. We know that he's on IR. We know that Anthony Richardson's out. He's on. I get that. But Josh Downs, Ashton Dulin, Tyquan Lewis, there are players, Samson Ebukam, players that you're wondering what happens to them for this week. And then you think about it, Eddie, and I know that it is not the responsible thing professionally to say, and I know that the Colts in particular can't say this, but you do wonder, does the quality or lack thereof of an opponent impact the necessity of getting players back on the field? Joel Erickson's going to join us in about 10 minutes, and that's one of the things I'm going to ask him is, is it possible that the Colts would look at, let's say, a Josh Downs? Now, Josh Downs is different because he's in the protocol, and that's an independent neurologist, and et cetera. Yeah, Ashton Dulin. Is it possible that they look at an Ashton Dulin or a Tyquan Lewis, and they say, okay, this guy's 85%. And 85% against New England or against Kansas City or against Buffalo is enough to get the guy on the field. But 85% against Tennessee, let's go ahead and get the extra 100% out of him. Let's go ahead and put the phone on the battery saver option and let it sit for a little bit longer and try to get that number up a little bit. I don't know. And I know that teams would not say that. But I'm interested or curious as to whether or not that is a possibility in moving forward. But there is still a game to be played. It is going to be, and Eddie, I asked you this earlier, this game being at 4:25. Now, you handed me a sheet of paper here, hot off the press. Hot off the press, I'm going to read it right now. Do we have the breaking news sounder by chance?
It's not from me, Jake. It's from Todd Meyer. I want to give the proper respect on who gave you that paper. That's hot off the press.
But we have a very, very important announcement to make. On Sunday, the Colts and the Tennessee Titans will be available at our sister station, 97.1 Hank FM. The ride to kick off with J&V and the Colts pregame huddle will be available on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan starting at 12:30. The Fan will have the Pacers at the Minnesota Timberwolves. Mark Boyle, Eddie Gill, and Pat Boylan have all the action beginning at 6:30 p.m. at your home of the Pacers, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. So does that mean the game is on both Hank and The Fan?
No. The game is exclusively on Hank FM.
Gotcha. Okay.
Pacers will be here in its entirety. We will have the pregame coverage for Colts vs. Titans.
Oh, because it's 6:30. See, my brain is still saying the 1 o'clock, you know what I mean, that it's a 1 o'clock game. That's the interesting curveball in all of this. This is a, 4:25 kick?
Yes, it is.
And that to me alone, do we have the breaking news sounder by chance? This just in, although we've known it forever, but let it sink in and continue to let it sink in because I'm not alone. I'm telling you right now, you folks, I can see you. I can hear you. I can see you. I can feel you. I can sense you. You are saying to yourself, even though you don't want to admit it out loud, you are saying to yourself, I'm glad this guy just mentioned 3 times that the Colts game is a late start this Sunday because I'm conditioned to think 1 o'clock start, in particular when it's against the Tennessee Titans. If it's against Kansas City, if it's against Buffalo, if it's against the Rams, then I'm thinking to myself, okay, because for whatever reason, we think 4:25 start means either West Coast or bigger high-profile game. Maybe I'm the only one that thinks that. But I cannot be the only one. Is there anybody else out there? Please let me know in order to basically make me feel better about my own neuroticism here. Is there anybody else that's like, I'm glad that guy mentioned 4:25 because I had forgotten that and I never would have remembered that the Colts and Titans game is going to be a 4:25 kick on Sunday because you are conditioned to believe 1 o'clock. Jags and Titans always, 1 o'clock. No, 4:25 start, approximately. Second game of the day. Eddie, you look tired today.
You
look
good.
like you're dozing off. Am I boring you?
No.
You sure?
No, I'm good.
You appear hypnotic.
No, I'm excellent. I'm locked in. I'm just working on something over here. Editing some
in.
audio.
He is locked in. What's that?
Editing some audio.
What audio are you editing?
Well, Scott Dolson was on the morning show, so I'm sifting through that for you.
Okay. We're doing a live show, though, right?
I'm capable of multitasking, Jake.
But are you?
I am.
On the program today, by the way, Joel Erickson going to join us from the Colts complex coming up just about 5 minutes from now. In November, and we've had this guy on before, and he was super fun, and he's a great personality. But Guenther Steiner, if you say to yourself, that name sounds familiar, he is one of the big stars of Drive to Survive, the Formula One, obviously, show on Netflix, which has catapulted Formula One in popularity. He's worked in essentially all areas of Formula One. He's also worked. He's on the NASCAR side of things. Worked out with that, and he's going to be at Clues Hall in November 14th. He's going to be at Clues Hall for Unfiltered Live. He's got a book out, Unfiltered, where he tells basically racing stories and behind the scenes, and I think he tattletales on people as well. And he's going to join us coming up on the program. I look forward to that about an hour from now. And then yesterday, I know that J&V had on Matt Painter. Purdue is getting set to take on Kentucky. And that's going to be an exhibition game Friday night. The guy that scheduled that, who has been on the show before, and I think is just a really good insight, not only in talking about Purdue and their upcoming season, but also just in the behind the scenes. He's kind of the behind the scenes guy for Matt Painter and Purdue. Elliot Bloom from Purdue basketball going to join us, director of operations up there, at 2 o'clock today. And one of the things that I'm very curious that we're going to get into a lot today, and when I say this right now, it almost sounds like one of those late July, give me your Mount Rushmore of high school basketball, sports talk radio, generic topics, if you will. But it's not. I personally believe on this, the 22nd of October of 2025, that what we're going to talk about today is something that is only going to get louder and louder and louder. And it kind of went, I'm not going to say off radar yesterday, but it wasn't as much, at least in this show, certainly. We didn't talk about it a huge amount. And when you hear it, you're going to say, okay, this doesn't jump out at me as anything seismic. London Johnson, I believe is his name. I believe I'm saying that name correctly. London Johnson. Now, you're saying to yourself, London Johnson, former president? No, that's Lyndon Johnson. Oh, that's right, yeah. London Johnson, like a former running back for the Arizona Cardinals. No. That London Johnson. London Johnson just spent 3 years in the NBA G League. Why is this guy talking about the G League? Why? The Pacers are getting ready to start tomorrow night, taking on Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City played last night in a double overtime game over Houston. Luka Doncic had like 43, and people were critiquing that LeBron didn't cheer for him on the sidelines. And the Pacers are getting ready to start tomorrow night to get their season underway after going to the NBA Finals for just the second time in franchise history. And why is this guy talking about the G League? What, like the Sioux Falls stuff? The Noblesville boom? What? Here's why. London Johnson played 3 years in the G League and yesterday verbally committed to the University of Louisville. He is now the second player, I believe there's one at Santa Clara, who has left the G League to go into college basketball. Why is that significant? I'll tell you why, because I think this could be a bolder, and people laugh if you want. Call me crazy if you want. But keep this in mind. When Ed O'Bannon, the former UCLA power forward, first filed a lawsuit because of his name, image, and likeness. You might have heard those three words before. Name, image, and likeness. He saw his name, image, and likeness in a video game and said, wait a minute. People are making money off that. Where's my cut? So he filed a lawsuit, and it took forever. It took forever to finally get ruled on and to draw a line in the sand and say this is what that means. And once that took place, then the NCAA said, fine. We'll allow kids to get paid for their name, image, and likeness. And at the time, you all said it. You all heard it. Well, yeah, a guy absolutely should be able to do an ad for the local pizza place and get himself some spending money. Okay. And you saw what happened. They barely cracked open that door, and then the sunlight didn't just dance through. It lit up the entire room. And it was a boulder in the stream moment. And I believe that this, too, is going to be, and that it's going to change, again, the landscape. One of the things that we're going to talk about over the course of today, and I think it's going to be an introduction to a topic that's not going anywhere for a long time and will only get louder as we go along. But joining us now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line, he is with the Indianapolis Star, and my understanding is that, and I know this actually, because the beer fairy, who occasionally visits the home of Joel A. Erickson, let me know the other day that Joel A. Erickson, when the beer fairy went by to check and look at the porch to make sure that the last delivery was picked up, saw Joel Erickson still laying face down in the front yard, not because of the supply from the beer fairy, but rather because his Milwaukee Brewers have yet to get up from Shohei Ohtani, knocking them right into an offseason of irrelevance. But Joel does have Colts work to get to as well. What's that?
It hurt. But the thing is, like, I think it probably hurt worse if you're a Mariners fan. Because, like, the Brewers, they were just never in the series. You know?
That's
I think
true.
it was worse if you go to 7.
By the time you get to Game 4, it was a fait accompli by the time you got to probably Game 3, right?
Yeah. 2018, when they got to Game 7 and had a lead in Game 7, that one hurt worse.
Now, if you're a Mariners fan, you are saying to yourself, this is disappointing, but the good news is this is good for Jake Query because he is a diehard, live and breathe, dyed in the wool, not one but 2 different Blue Jays hats for now going on 8 weeks. So that's good. Right?
It is a good hat. It's a great hat. Like the Blue Jay stuff is great.
Here's the thing. I have a 93 World Series Blue Jays hat that is fraying. Like literally when I'm wearing it, it looks like there's an aura coming off of me. Like every time that I wear it, like weird people come up to me because they're like, dude, you got an aura coming off you. But no, that's actually just loose blue threads off the back of my hat because it's 32 years old. That shows, does it not, that I am at the very least a traditional bandwagoner, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. 93, is that the year that they had Ricky Henderson for a little bit?
Correct.
Yeah.
The most underrated, even though he's a rated great player in sports history. Okay, Joel, let's get to this. From the Colts standpoint, I realize that, you're just getting ready to go into the locker room, so maybe we don't have a real feel for it right now, but I want to start with simply the injuries because we mentioned it. There are those that we're looking for to see where things stand and who may be in or out. Do we have any better feel right now than we did a couple days ago on who might miss the game against Tennessee?
So Josh Downs is going to practice today. He's still in the concussion protocol, but the fact that he's practicing on Wednesday is generally a good sign. Now, you can always have where they practice and then
Correct.
They develop symptoms again like Alec Pierce. But in general, it's a good sign for Josh Downs to be practicing. On the defensive end front, I would suggest that Samson Ebukam is probably not likely for this week. Shane Steichen said he's week to week. And then the big one, I think, is that Jalen Jones they're activating his 21-day practice window. And I kind of asked, like, is he going to have to ramp up? Is he going to have to practice a lot? And Steichen said, we'll see how the week goes, but our training staff has done a good job of ramping him up already. And that made me wonder if maybe Jalen Jones has a chance to play this week. You
know what's interesting, by the way? The phrase ramping it up. Now, I've used this phrase as well, right? But when you go up the ramp, you slow down, don't you? Isn't that interesting?
That's a good point.
You know what I mean? I guess
there are some on ramps where you're on ramping onto the highway.
I guess up. Evel Knievel probably is speeding up when he's ramping it up, right?
No, this is a really good point. You're right. Most times you're hitting a ramp and going up, you are slowing down.
Yeah. Joel, have you started to discover yet the fact that these are the reasons why I'm awake at 3:48 in the morning? You know what I mean? I feel like, Joel, okay, I want to ask you this, and I asked Eddie this earlier. Tennessee is obviously struggling. Tennessee has already had a coaching change. Tennessee has a young quarterback that has yet to really find any stability. They don't have great players in a lot of different areas. I mean, the Titans are struggling. Does that in any way, does the quality or the perceived challenge of an opponent impact at all the rate in which they will bring a player back from injury?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think it probably has to, right? Like if somebody's hurt and you're on a team like the Titans where you're 1-6 and the playoffs aren't something, you probably feel like you can allow somebody to get all the way better instead of getting almost all the way better, right?
Correct. And likewise, for example, though, take the case of Jalen Jones. If the Colts, and I'm not saying he would be ready this week, but let's just say hypothetically that they're entering into the window of when they could return him to the field. Do they say to themselves, yeah, realistically, we can probably get by against Tennessee without him, so that buys us an extra week? I mean, does that thought process come into mind?
Maybe, but I think the other thing is that, I'll say this. I would say with Shane Steichen, I think with some coaches when they say that stuff, I think, like we take every, when they say the thing where like we take every opponent the same. I think some coaches are kind of putting it on. I do think Shane Steichen is maybe paranoid in a good way about that type of stuff. Anytime that's ever floated to him, he's like, well, there was this game that was played last week, and it looked like, that team beat that team, So I think that Shane generally looks at these games as more difficult than the rest of us do. But I do think that probably comes into play sometimes. With Jones specifically, I think the fact that he had a hamstring injury, got re-injured with a hamstring injury, and then had to miss this much time, I would assume that they've probably already been having those discussions, because most hamstring injuries, to my understanding, your hamstring feels okay about 2 weeks before it's actually okay.
Yeah, okay. So in other words, you have to kind of put a governor on guys, right? I mean, in the beginning, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Put a rev limit on.
Yeah, absolutely. They got to be pretty careful with guys coming off of hamstring injuries, because they get to a point where it feels like it's okay, and then it's not quite there yet, and they have another pull.
Joel, have you ever had – Joel A. Erickson is our guest from the Indy Star. He's on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Have you ever had a dream where – like a nightmare where you're trying to go somewhere and every door is locked? Like, you know what I mean? Like you go down a hallway and like the door's locked. You can't get it open. Like you're kind of trapped. Has this ever happened to you, or is this, again, my neuroticism?
The one I get even to this day.
I know.
Is like,
last day of school, you got a final and you haven't. Is that it?
No, it is high school, but it's like I'm trying to get to football practice, and like my helmet's not there, and my shoulder pads aren't there, and no matter what I do, I can't get out to practice.
Okay.
That's the one I have.
Okay, so my point being, it feels like a year ago that was Shane Steichen. Like it felt like every time he was trying to get something going, he couldn't find it, or the door was locked, or just every button pushed seemed to just, you were waiting for it. And it's the opposite this year. Literally everything is going the Colts' way. Every call that they're making is the perfect call. Every audible they're making is the right audible. All of it. Is Shane Steichen now, are we seeing a coach that we were told was this ball coach, deep in the playbook genius? Are we seeing now a coach that is simply more confident and finally has found his rhythm in the way he calls a game? Or does he now simply have a quarterback that is allowing him the versatility to call plays that he would not have felt comfortable calling a year ago?
I think it's the second one. I think it's the quarterback. I think that it's, with Anthony Richardson, there was a certain amount of the playbook he could call, an amount of what he could run. Shane Steichen is very, very, very good at figuring out what a defense is going to do based on how they line up, that kind of thing. But he can't do that himself on the field. Daniel Jones is also very good at it and spends a lot of time obsessing over that stuff. And when you can always read the picture and know what they're going to do, Steichen is also good at having answers for that. Jones is good at knowing what those answers should be and doing it. So I think the biggest thing is just he has a quarterback who can play football the way Shane Steichen sees football. And that's why we're seeing the offense look the way it does.
And Joel A. Erickson is our guest. If you got to run ahead in the locker room, you let me know here, okay? But I'm curious of this. In your opinion, it is more important for Chris Ballard here at the trade deadline coming up to A, get a pass rusher, B, get a corner, or C, none of the above?
I still think it's corner. I know that the options seem better at pass rusher, and maybe in a vacuum you take the better player. But even with Jones coming back, even with Ward coming back, it just feels like the way things have gone at corner this year, they've been they've been hit so hard by injury that you got to have another player there. I mean, they're rotating Cameron Mitchell and Jonathan Edwards last week, and it just feels like they're thin there. And I think you just want the extra player. And the other thing about it is, if you look back at this offseason, everything Chris Ballard has done to this point has said we need to be super deep at corner by going out and getting Ward, by drafting Wally, by getting Xavier Howard, trading for Mekhi Blackman. Like, he has consistently told us we need to have corners for this defense. And for whatever reason, the people in charge, the gods in charge of the injuries, are like, no, we're going to keep ruining your cornerback position. But it feels like that what he's told us is that he feels like they need more players at cornerback all the time. And so I know the options don't look as good there, but I feel like the need is greater.
So Daniel Jones does not qualify for comeback player of the year because he was not injured. Is that correct?
That is correct. They changed that rule a couple years ago when Joe Flacco beat out DeMar Hamlin in an award that honestly should have gone to Baker Mayfield. But they changed that rule. It has to be coming off of some physical malady.
You know what? They should come up with a new – I'm coming up with a – do we have the breaking news sounder by chance, Eddie? This just in, Daniel Jones is now eligible for a new NFL award that was created by 93.5, 107.5, The Fans Jake Query, which is simply called the not comeback player of the year, but in fact his old team sucked and he didn't award. Right?
I like that.
Yeah.
That's a great award.
And here's the thing. Every player that used to play for the New York Giants is instantly eligible.
They are. I cannot believe that Brian Daboll couldn't figure out what Shane Steichen has figured out, that there's a way to use Daniel Jones' obsessive preparation pre-snap to always give him the right answers. I don't understand what was going on there. Also, the other thing is, if you think back to what he was in New York, they treated him like he was a run-only quarterback.
Right.
And the Colts are treating him like a pocket quarterback, and the second option is being way more successful than the first one. Like, did they just not understand? Did Brian Daboll just not understand what Daniel Jones was, like, at all?
The other thing that's interesting is the much maligned, and I'll give Chris Ballard credit here, Joel, that offensive line for the Colts is also Daniel Jones deserves all the flowers, but that offensive line, man, they have absolutely delivered for them.
Those two picks that he made in the middle rounds in 2024, where they took Matt Gonzalez in the third round and they took Tanner Bortolini in the fourth round, and neither guy really had a spot in the starting lineup. And at the time, I think we all said, like, this is a pick for the future, for next year when they don't have these guys. But the fact that he made those picks, recognized that those guys were the guys they needed and made those picks and set them up for this year, I think is maybe the most underrated part of how this offense is playing.
Most importantly, before you go into the locker room, World Series, you're rooting for the Blue Jays or you're rooting for the Dodgers?
I am not rooting for the Death Star. Go Blue Jays.
It is the fifth highest payroll in Major League Baseball, by the way, Toronto. But yes.
I know, but you can't, like, the Dodgers are like the Yankees were when I was a kid. Like, it just feels like they can, like they're in the World Series, and two headlines I saw on social media were like, the Dodgers expected to be the number one player for this free agent. And you're like, come on, just stop.
Kyle Tucker.
Their payroll is $298 million higher than the Brewers. I think that's right? And that doesn't include the $3.5 billion that Shohei Ohtani gets in like 5 years after he retires.
Right. They had 6 players on the roster whose contracts were worth more, like their individual contract was worth more than the Brewers' payroll entirely.
Unbelievable. All right, well, if the Blue Jays win, I am told, if the Blue Jays win, the Beer Fairy might actually deliver you some Canadian beer.
Oh, well, okay. Yeah, go Blue Jays even more now. Go Vladdy.
All right. Joe, we appreciate it as always.
You bet. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Joel A. Erickson from the Indianapolis Star and the Java House Peel and Pour gas line. All right, a lot to get to with that for the Colts, but I do want to get back into this situation yesterday. Scott Dolson was on this morning, the athletic director at Indiana, and talked to the Fan Morning Show with, of course, Jeff Ricker, Kevin Bowen, and James Boyd about just NIL. And mostly what he was saying was just Indiana in terms of their incredible alumni support group. But I think there are two things that come into play here that continue to kind of divide in college athletics when it comes to NIL. And yesterday, a story that just, I think, kind of went, as I'd mentioned, a little bit off the radar, and I want to get more into what exactly it means. I'll explain all of that on the other side here. And again, Elliot Bloom, Purdue, coming up 2 o'clock. Guenther Steiner coming up hour from now here on a Wednesday edition, Query & Company on the Fan. I was reading something the other day, and I find it very, very interesting. If you look at, and I get the fact that this gets into a nuanced area that is probably, there are a million different tentacles to it. But an article that I recently read, top 25 budgets in NIL collectives in college football. I'm just using football as an example here. But football, okay? Football more often than not is the bigger. At most schools, football obviously has a higher operating budget. And football as well is the bigger revenue generator because of the television contracts. And then obviously, even though there are fewer games, the huge number of people that go and the tailgating, all of it. Football is a more part of the lifestyle of a school oftentimes than basketball for the most part. But listen to the schools that I'm about to name. These are the schools with the largest NIL collectives. And basically bank account, okay? Illinois, Washington, Louisville, South Carolina, Iowa, Florida State, Oregon, Kentucky, Arkansas, Auburn, Tennessee, Virginia, Michigan State, Indiana, Penn State, Oklahoma, Clemson, Florida, Alabama, Michigan, Texas A&M, Georgia, LSU, and Ohio State. Now, I'm under the assumption that private schools don't need to release their collectives because they're private. But most of those are big state universities. And I do think that there is benefit to that. You go to a school like in Indiana, like a Michigan State, Georgia, Alabama. There are obvious exceptions here. But to a great extent, going to those schools and the alumni base usually stay closer within the market than do students at Stanford, Notre Dame, for that Duke. Schools like that are so specified and so academically coveted that their graduates then disperse elsewhere. And I'm not saying that a degree from Indiana doesn't allow you to get a job anywhere. I'm not saying that. But if you are going to a Stanford, a Duke, a Notre Dame, whatever it might be, number one, pretty good odds that you're from anywhere across the country. And number two, pretty good odds that you are then going to go back to wherever it was that you grew up or some other area that is paying you a high-dollar job right out of school that is miles and states away from where you went to school. And that sounds crazy until you think about this. When you go to an Indiana and you work in an office where the vast majority of people that you work with spent their Saturday going to the Indiana game or the Purdue game or the Kentucky game, or you went to Louisville and the same holds true and you are around and embedded by and still part of a lot of the people that are following the team of the school that you went or you are within driving range to go and go down for games, it still becomes your college of attendance and graduation becomes a bigger part of your social life and your culture in those circumstances than if you were to graduate from Indiana and then go take a job in Denver or San Diego. Yes, you are still an Indiana fan. And yes, but you're kind of on an island where you go to work. You're like, Indiana has a big win on Saturday, and you get to work, and you're like, oh, my gosh, did you watch the Indiana game? And everybody else there is like, yeah, I went to Colorado. I mean, I saw it. That's cool. They won, right? So therefore, you are less inclined to feel the investment that would lead you to make a financial contribution that allows your university to have a huge NIL collective. And if you look at those schools that have that big bank account, more often than not, it's those that have the closest access to the majority of their alumni base. Indiana has a huge alumni base across the country, no doubt about it. But its athletic prowess would be more significant to those within the immediacy than those that are living in Boise, Idaho now. And so as a result of that, I think that those schools have a major advantage. And it's for that reason that in Indiana, when it came to this new era of the NIL collective and the basically pay for play, they were ahead of the curve, truthfully. Scott Dolson and the administration of Indiana had things in place so that it was rip off the lid and go because they foresaw where we were headed. And where we were headed, I think yesterday took a major fork in the road. And I think it's going to impact and impacts basketball. Could be advantage Indiana, could be advantage Kansas here, could be advantage Kentucky. But yesterday something happened that is a major fork in the road, and I am totally under belief that it is going to be something that years from now we're going to look back on and say, that was another watershed moment. I'll explain what I mean by that, and we'll get back into what we were talking about of what players could be available for the Colts. We'll do that in about 15. Now, for whatever reason, Eddie, I was and I'm not, but I had a couple yawns there when we started the show. Watch how easy this is. You ready? You know this.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going with the Colombian, this is my favorite, the Colombian cold brew, but also the Wrangler Energy outstanding from Java House.
You combining them? Is that what you're doing?
No, I'm showing everybody how easy it is. Boom. Right there. And the coffee is outstanding.
Was it Ben Dietzel up in on the 5th floor in sales that recommended combining like the Liquid Science and the Wrangler Energy together?
Swamp water is what they call it over at Ed Carpenter Racing. That is because the Liquid Science Arctic Freeze and the Wrangler Energy, and that way you're hydrated and woken up at the same time. It is, but I'm telling you, it's that easy. If you just saw that on the YouTube channel, how easy it is to do the Peel and Pour Java House. Jake25 is the discount code. All right, at javahouse.com. So when I was talking about all of that in the build-up here on the NIL, yesterday the University of Louisville became the second program now to get a verbal commitment and then sign to their roster a player out of the G League. Now, the reason this to me is significant, Jake, calm down. So a player's coming out of the G League, but follow the rules here, buddy. Pay attention to the rules. Okay? The NCAA has said, okay, listen, we can no longer have this hypocrisy of saying that players are ineligible if they have been paid elsewhere because they're no longer amateurs. That was like, an Olympic rule. Obviously, that went away with the Dream Team, right? And in college basketball, if you get compensation for something or you are part of a financial compensation, I'm going by the old rules, you're ineligible. Steve Alford poses for a calendar, Mr. November for a fundraiser for a sorority, misses a game against Kentucky. Build your own irony. But the smallest of things, a recruit got a free pizza on a recruiting visit, or an assistant coach paid for his parents to get an air flight to come and visit the school. NCAA violation, ineligible. Bo Jackson is the Heisman Trophy winner, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers say, we want to fly you in to interview you about making you the number one pick in the draft. And he says, I'll do that, except for I want to play baseball in the spring for Auburn. And Tampa Bay, the Buccaneers say, no problem. It's football, not baseball. That's not going to jeopardize your eligibility. They pay and fly him to Tampa Bay, put him up in a hotel, take him out to dinner. The NCAA says you're ineligible now for baseball, Bo Jackson, because you took money and you compromised your amateur athleticism. Those have gone out the window because of the Ed O'Bannon ruling of name, image, likeness. And at the time that Ed O'Bannon sued for name, image, likeness compensation because his name, image, and likeness were part of a video game, as were players all across college basketball, at the time it was, okay, listen, you can give them a little stipend, a little extra money if they're selling the jersey in the bookstore or they're putting their name on a video game. These players should be able to get money to go to a movie or take their friends out for pizza. That was the initial thought. Instantly, and I mean it went from 0 to 1,000 instantly in terms of the miles an hour. Instantly that turned into, hey, did you hear? The quarterback is leaving Tennessee because he wanted $4.7 million a year, and now he's at UCLA and he's making $1.5 million. He took a pay cut, but he's, etc. Man, Kansas just signed a point guard, and there's rumor that he's making $800,000 to sign. And the roof was blown off of it, the lid was blown off of it, because how do you govern at that point once the toothpaste is out of the tube? And yes, right now the NCAA is saying that you can go into the G League and then come out of the G League and go back into college basketball so long as you meet the following criteria. You were never drafted by an NBA team. You were never given a full NBA contract, and you are within 5 years of your high school graduation. You meet those requirements, and you're on your way. You are eligible in college basketball. And for right now, you could say, okay, so you're talking about a very small percentage of player, a very small number of guys that are going to go from high school into the G League, not get any sort of an NBA contract, and then within that 5-year window decide they want to go back to college. But what about this? What about a player, as is the case here, I believe, that starts in college, leaves early, goes undrafted, doesn't get drafted, so signs in the G League for a year or two, and then decides to go back because they're like, you know what, I still got 2 years of eligibility left, which is what is you're going to start seeing more of, number one. Can you imagine now if you have a player at Indiana, Purdue, wherever it may be? Elliot Bloom's going to join us from Purdue in about an hour. I think this will be an interesting discussion how you navigate this. So you sign a player, and that player after his freshman year says, I'm going to the league. And he declares himself for the NBA draft. Now, it used to be that if it looked like you weren't going to be drafted in the NBA, you had to pull your name out, and then you went to college. So now what if a guy says, I'm going in no matter what? So he goes in, he goes undrafted, he signs with the main red clause, he plays there for 3 years, and then he says, I think I want to go back to Duke.
I don't think you can do that. Because I think once you forego any future eligibility.
Incorrect. Yesterday, it was ruled, so long as you are within 5 years of your high school graduation and you have not signed an NBA contract, if you are in the G League and you were not drafted by an NBA team, you are eligible to go back to college. There are now 2 players that have done so. Now, in addition to that, what I'm saying is this. This is introducing a slippery slope because when we initially said that NIL and the NCAA said, we're going to allow for some stipends to take place, but we're going to figure out some sort of a limit on it. But the highway was moving way too fast, and it was they couldn't just merge over from the treadmill onto the highway because it was moving too fast. And each time they tried, they fell down. So with this is, and you're going to laugh when I say this, this is eventually going to, and I'm not saying that any player would want to do this, but eventually, what stops a Romeo Langford from deciding he wants to go back to Indiana, finish his eligibility because his NBA career has not taken off the way that he thought? What stops a Zion Williamson from saying, I'm tired of the pros. You know what? I regret that I never got Duke to a national championship. I'm going back to Duke.
The London Johnson is the guy you're talking about with Louisville. He did not go to college. He went straight to the G League.
Understood. But what I'm saying is, that's what I'm talking. But Eddie, what I'm saying is, right now, the ruling is, so long as the NCAA has come out and said, look at the one at Santa Clara, the NCAA has come out and said, the only rulings that we're putting on it right now is that you cannot have signed an NBA contract, you have to be within 5 years of your high school graduation. And in addition to that, within 5 years of the graduation, no NBA contract, and you could not have been drafted. But what I'm saying is, each time that the NCAA rules and tries to govern these kinds of things, it is determined a blurred line that a court comes out and says is in defiance of the individual's choice. And in this particular case, the NCAA yesterday came out and said, those are the only parameters we're putting on it. So if you are somebody that played in college, went into the G League, so long as you meet that criteria, you can go back. Tom Izzo went off on this because he's like, where do we draw the line? The line now is the line is all written in pencil. Everything is. And I know it's ludicrous to say, and Tom Izzo was making the joke, I'm just going to go get Magic Johnson and bring him back because he still has eligibility. That sounds ludicrous. But if anybody challenges it, you know which way it's going to go. And I just think it starts to become, what it is doing is it is now making officially what we have already known, and that is that the NCAA is, in fact, it is again, and this is my whole point on it. It is my belief, and I've felt this forever, North Carolina, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisville, you could put Indiana in this category, UCLA, the big brand college basketball programs. The big brand, if we're talking the basketball side of things, as I talk about all the time, the Hat World Conference, those are the schools that you walk into Hat World in Butte, Montana, and they've got them hanging on the wall because that's what sells. North Carolina, Notre Dame in football, obviously, but everybody knows which ones I'm talking about, the blue blood basketball bread-winning programs. It would not surprise me in any way, shape, or form if we are on the precipice now of eventually those schools leaving the NCAA and becoming their own G League and paying top dollar in an NBA-sanctioned minor league. I think it's heading there, and I think it's heading there faster than anybody can imagine. And it would not surprise me at all if literally that's where we are, where you're going to go play for UCLA, North Carolina. The only thing holding those schools probably still within it is March Madness and the money that comes from the television contracts of it. But if the NBA starts sanctioning it in the other way, then Katie bar the door. Back into the Colts and who may be in or out against Tennessee next. NCAA also determined that since the G League salary is typically around $40K, it's so small that it just covers living expenses. That's why if they didn't sign an NBA contract, they will be eligible in college. That's my point, though, is that it is a slippery slope. And because all I'm saying is this, the precedent, and I'm a big believer in precedent, the precedent says that each time the NCAA has tried to draw a line in the sand, immediately that line gets blurred out by somebody taking it one step further and challenging it. And this is the introduction to the challenge of somebody saying, but if you're allowing somebody because the G League salary isn't big enough, every player in the G League is convinced they should be in the NBA. Or every player in the G League went into the G League because they originally thought they were an NBA player. And it is going to be, Tom Izzo is absolutely 100% correct. There's a reason Tom Izzo is livid about this. And there's a reason he has spoken up, because what often happens in any line of work in any business, in any line of work or any business, oftentimes the one who is the most vociferous about legitimate concern is the one who has the least time left and the most equity to be able to stand up and say something without challenge. And that's what Tom Izzo is. He is the coach that is saying, look, this is walking into a very dangerous headwind. And the NCAA is terrified from a football standpoint that the Big Ten schools, and 18 of them, and the SEC notably, with then you throw in, say, Notre Dame, they're terrified that they're going to secede and say, we don't need you anymore. Let's do our own deal. Do our own thing. And if Kansas, Kentucky, Duke, Indiana, North Carolina, UCLA, Texas in basketball, because Texas has a huge athletic department, if they just said, you know what, the NCAA tournament and March Madness is awesome, but the only time typically that we are part of the highlight reel of it is if we get beat in the first round by Abilene Christian. So we're just going to start our own league and pay players as much as we can, and we'll just call it the G2. The G2 League. Roll in the money, baby. You think Nike and Gatorade and all those wouldn't start funding that? Let's go. I just think it's a slippery slope, and I think Tom Izzo is right in his critique of it because he absolutely sees exactly that. I'll bet you $100 if you asked him point blank, what is the primary reason why you are concerned about players signing from the G League to Louisville or whatever else he is saying. It's not about what I think London Johnson's going to do for Louisville and the fact that he's not playing for Michigan State. It's about what the precedent says this could lead to. The Colts in Tennessee coming up on Sunday. And again, if you're just joining us on the program, thank you, Eddie. On Sunday, the Colts and Tennessee Titans will be available at our sister station, 97.1 Hank FM. Entire game on Hank FM, 97.1, our sister station. The ride to kick off with JMV and the Colts pregame huddle will be still on the Fan beginning at 12:30. But this radio station, so you go pregame Fan, then you go totality of game on Hank FM, then the Fan will have the Pacers beginning at 6:30 as they take on the Minnesota Timberwolves. The reason being, and I'm going to have to repeat this literally to myself, not for you folks. I trust and I believe in the intellect of all of you. It's myself that I don't trust in remembering stuff. And Sunday's game being a 4 o'clock kick or 4:25, whatever it may be, but the late game on Sunday between the Colts and Titans is when I am 74 years old, if I'm still here, then I will say, if someone says to me, Jake, over the course of your lifetime, tell me the things that most surprised you. Well, I never thought I would see the day where you could make an instantaneous phone call to the other side of the world and actually look at the person's face while you're talking to them. That blew me away. What else? I can't believe that in 2025, on October 22nd, I found out that the Colts and the Tennessee Titans are the late game. Now, I know that this was announced when the scheduling came out. But I cannot be alone in saying to myself, wait, Sunday at 4 o'clock? The late game? The Colts and Titans? Usually that's the game that it's let's get that one over with. Because I don't think that Tennessee is necessarily. And who knows? I mean, it's the NFL. Any given Sunday, I get that. But matchup-wise, there appears to be a huge chasm between these two. Do we know the point spread right now, Eddie?
14.5.
I mean, that's massive in the NFL. That's a 29-point game in college. What we know for the Colts, the following. From Joel A. Erickson just about an hour ago when he was out at the Colts complex, he let us know this. Jalen Jones, the window for him to begin practicing again is now open, coming off of the injury he was coming off of with the hamstring. And they are going to exercise, pardon the pun, that window. So Jalen Jones will be brought back into the practice field. And that's not to say that he is going to be immediately available. But that is encouraging news because that defensive backfield has been so depleted. In addition to that, Josh Downs is practicing today. He is still in the concussion protocol, but he is practicing today. Others that we're looking out for, Ashton Doolin with the chest injury, Samson Ebukam. I can never say that last name.
Ebukam.
I know, but I always want to say Ekubam. Ebukam. Matt Taylor, I'll give him all the credit in the world. And I've got to say names in racing sometimes that are tricky. But Samson Ebukam, I can't say it. See?
Ebukam.
Huh?
Ebukam.
Samson Ebukam.
Yep.
It's the B that throws me off because there's no B or P in the first, but then you feel like they're Samson Ebukam.
There you go.
I know, but I'll still trip it up. Either way, knee injury, and I don't believe that he is going back out today. We are still awaiting on that in terms of where they stand. But when you look at the Titans, you know, Cam Ward is, I do think that what you see in Cam Ward and with the Titans is what we hear so often about quarterbacks making the jump into the NFL. And it goes back to just simply window time. Oftentimes, I think when a player at the college level just has an athleticism that is so much faster than everyone else on the field, it makes for a tougher learning curve when you get into the pros because you just have always relied on being a step ahead of everybody. And in the NFL, that instantly evens out, and now you've got to rely on the things that collegiately you never had to take advantage of. Trevor Lawrence is a really good example of this as well, not from an athletic standpoint, but as I've talked about, the athleticism of his receivers in college. When Trevor Lawrence was at, and listen, I think everybody knows what I think of Trevor Lawrence, but when Trevor Lawrence was in college, he was throwing at nearly all times to receivers that were a step ahead of whoever was guarding them. He didn't have to think about windows. The Peyton Manning line of when Peyton Manning went through his rookie camp, and he goes back to Tom Moore, and Tom Moore says, "Why did you not uncork that pass?" And Peyton Manning says, "That guy wasn't open." And Tom Moore says, "He's NFL open. He just wasn't Tennessee open." And I think for Cam Ward, the combination of A, understanding when guys are open, and B, always being able at the collegiate level to, I mean, wonderful talent, wonderful player. But part of what made him so good in college was the fact that he was literally a step ahead of everyone else. It's why you got to give a ton of credit to Lamar Jackson. You know, remember Bill Polian saying Lamar Jackson was a receiver coming out of college, and Lamar Jackson gets into the NFL, and his athleticism and his ability to be basically a cheat code immediately translated. That is so rare. You could probably go back and look, and I'm sure like in his time coming into Baltimore, it was not instantaneous per se, but he looked like of course, he also is still a step ahead of everybody, right? I mean, like the athleticism for him did immediately transfer with advantage. But the feel for the game, if there was a learning curve for him, it did not seem like a huge one because he immediately was like, whoa, this guy is playing right away and playing at a high level. But I said off the top of the show, and I almost feel guilty about it. I almost feel guilty in admitting the fact that, like, I feel like, and Eddie, you tell me if you agree or disagree, I feel like it's a bye week, and that's such a dangerous thing in the NFL, and I don't mean that is even like a disrespect per se, to the Titans, but they're not any good. Like, what area do they jump out at you? Any?
Oh, you're talking to me? Sorry. I was just trying to think of something.
You're trying to think of any area or any reason why the Tennessee Titans alarm you?
Yeah, I was trying to think. I was just trying to compute something there.
They have a coaching change. They have a
Mike McCoy's their new coach, yeah.
They have a young quarterback that you know what I mean? I mean, there's just not a thing about it. And then you look at it, when you look at the Colts schedule, and you start to wonder, as I've talked about, I mean, I do think that if there's one area, I don't believe in trap games in the NFL. College, maybe, not in the NFL. But when you look at it, okay, then they got Pittsburgh. Are you looking ahead to that? I don't even think the Pittsburgh jumps out at you that much, right?
Yeah, they're an interesting one because obviously they have Aaron Rodgers, they have TJ Watt, and I think Haywood Highsmith should be, not Haywood Highsmith, that's NBA, but Alex Highsmith should be coming back soon for them. He got injured in their first game, and he's been on injury reserve, and I know he'll be back eventually. Got DK Metcalf. They've got some players, but still don't know if they're for real or not. Like we were talking about yesterday, there's just so many teams in that tier of they could be good, they could be bad. I thought Pittsburgh would be the team that we talked about it when we were doing all these teams, you know, who's going to be the surprising, most upsetting, whatever, that could, you know, get off the rails just because of the fact you have Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf. How's that all going to work? But they lost on Thursday Night Football coming out of the bye week to Cincinnati, and second week of Joe Flacco, and their schedule is about to get immensely tough. Like, they hadn't played anybody really in the first 5 games of the year.
This, by the way, from JR. Jake, you did your vacation story about the Colts schedule 2 weeks ago. No, I'm probably going to mention it all the time. The fact that, like, because that's what I was talking. It's pertinent because I was saying I go on vacation when it is on the bye week, and then I look at it and I'm like, man, I probably should have scheduled it this week because it feels like a bye week. It just feels like a week where I can't be the only one. That to me is what's interesting is the 4:00 start is I'm like, man, it feels like a game that like everybody else is like, yeah, I mean, you're excited to go to the Colts game, and it's awesome to go to an NFL game, and they are playing at such a high level that every game is massive, and it's awesome that they are the story of the NFL. I mean, they're the best story of the NFL right now. The 2 best stories in football, the NFL and college, are both right here in Central Indiana. That's all I'm saying is, man, I have to schedule my vacation every year during the bye week. I should have scheduled it this week because that's what it feels like. But at the same time, I want to be there because they have a chance to go 7-1 and then go into Pittsburgh at that point. Now, which games, Eddie, if you look at it, there are 3 to me that really jump out. If you had to pick 3 games going forward that are most likely, and I can't remember what time of year it is when the NFL can start flexing games, but now, games that feel like primetime matchups.
They can do it whatever. They can do it whenever now. Primetime matchups on the Colts schedule that you're asking me?
Yes.
3 games. Obviously Kansas City, Seattle, San Francisco's already there, and I can't even come up with third.
Pittsburgh?
Maybe.
Ooh,
maybe.
I think the Pittsburgh game's pretty big, don't you?
In what regard?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, because the Steelers. What's the Steelers' record?
They're 4-2.
Yeah, I mean, the Steelers are right there. I mean,
they have the Packers this week, Sunday Night Football. Then they have the Colts next week.
I would imagine that that's one of the more marquee matchups of that week.
Also, I can't imagine they would be flexed with the Colts. Because so they're on Sunday Night Football this week against the Packers. Colts and Steelers tentatively scheduled for 1:00, and then they're back on Sunday Night Football the following week against the Chargers.
You're probably right there.
There's no way that they're going to flex them and be on Sunday Night Football for 3 straight weeks.
That's fair. But I do think that it just feels like, though, that's going to be a marquee matchup. I mean, I think it's a really good matchup. And did you say Seattle? Now, see, the same thing can be said, though. If the Colts are playing already the next week in prime, they wouldn't do that 2 weeks in a row, right?
They're on Monday Night Football against San Francisco, so.
What about Jacksonville in the penultimate game of the year? at Jacksonville. Or no, that's at home, right?
That's the home game. Yeah,
maybe.
I don't know.
Then maybe the road game in Jacksonville, depending on what but the Jags. The thing about the Jags, they are very enigmatic, but does it not feel like with Jacksonville, that is a team that now that they have kind of tasted their own blood and they've been knocked back down to earth a little bit? I mean, a couple of weeks ago, you're like, okay, they might be able to hang around. It already feels like that separation has happened.
I mean, they had 14 turnovers through the first 5 weeks of the year. That is just incredibly unsustainable. And that's how they were winning so many of these games. And most of them, besides week one, were one-possession games. You win by a touchdown against Houston because Nico Collins has a critical fumble as they were making a drive there toward the end. San Francisco, you win by 5 because of some turnovers there with Mac Jones. Kansas City, you get the win late because of a nice throw to Brian Thomas Jr. from Trevor Lawrence, and then a couple penalties to help, get that drive started, then ultimately get them down to the 1-yard line. They fall to Seattle, Los Angeles. They have the bye week now. They will have an easy game coming off the bye week. They have Vegas and Houston, both of those games on the road. They have the Chargers, Cardinals, Titans, then the Colts. So there is a chance to where that game could be competitive.
And that's kind of favorable, right?
Yes. Obviously, this is all, I think it would largely probably have to depend on what the Colts look like around that time. Like if they still have, whatever, a 2 to 3 game lead, maybe even 4, depending on how things go. I don't know if there's any necessity of moving to the Colts and Jaguars to prime time.
Hey, Jake. What do you think Purdue football has to do to get where IU is? Is Barry Odom the answer? Is he just another Ryan Walters, or is it too early to tell? Great question. This on the text line at 239-1070. I think Barry Odom is a really good coach. And if you look at what he did at UNLV, yes, a short window of time there, but also at UNLV, same limitations to an extent as Purdue, just in terms of like NIL and those sorts of things. Obviously, a different league and competitiveness of the league. The biggest challenge for Purdue, my opinion, is the league that they're in. And yes, you get huge television money from that. But look at the schools that have the biggest amount to you. And NIL collective and being able to compensate players is not the end-all, be-all. But it helps. And in recruiting, notably. I don't think that a lot of players going to college necessarily think that, like, they're going to retire off of what they make in college, but they want to feel loved, right? They want to feel wanted. That means a lot to 18-year-old kids. It means a lot to any of us, but to 18-year-old kids notably. I think Purdue has 2 challenges. The first being the league that they're in, and the second being, and I know Purdue fans are going to jump all over me on this, and I get it. I mean it actually as a positive here. I think Purdue is an unbelievable academic university. I think in this state, in Indiana, we take for granted sometimes the fact that we have 2 major – and look, Indiana State Teachers College, it's a wonderful university for teachers. And, Ball State is an incredible communication school. I mean, but in terms of the 2 largest state schools in the state, I'm just going to talk specifically about Indiana-Purdue because of the Big Ten aspect of it. Purdue is such a fine university, and as a land-grant school and its mathematical background and everything else, I love the fact that in Indiana we have 2 major state universities that provide 2 different outstanding curriculums for the most part as their strength that is like one side of the brain or the other side of the brain. And Purdue is so academically reputed. I think a lot of people think of Purdue as a private university. I think a lot of people outside the Midwest don't realize it's in Indiana, but they know about its aeronautical space programs and its engineering programs and et cetera. All long-winded way of saying that I think Purdue graduates have a much higher percentage of chance of leaving or even having come from originally outside the state of Indiana. And their graduates are like a shotgun start where they're going all over the country. And when you are going into your professional life detached from the consistent, constant circle around of your friends and your coworkers and your colleagues that are involved in that rivalry, you are less inclined to dip deep into your pocketbooks to financially support the athletic programs and the NIL collectives within. So Purdue right there in terms of that funding has a bit of a disadvantage. But more so, the disadvantage is the fact that the other schools already in this new wild era of that have taken off with their programs, not even from the financial standpoint, just from a win standpoint, and Purdue was against the 8 ball because of the last couple of, the coaching changes. Well, Jeff Brom was really good, but the Ryan Walters thing and just how much they bottomed out. I think Barry Odom's an outstanding coach, and I think right now they may not be as talented as other teams, but I do think that they've had some penalties and whatever else, but I think he's a very sound coach. I don't think he's a flashy coach, but to get where Indiana is, can they get there? Sure. But I think it's going to take more time. Cignetti was able to bring with him, and this was such a big thing, and I think Odom did as well, his entire staff. Not just bringing like a guy here or there, but like his entire staff. And then in Cignetti's case, 18 players or whatever it was from JMU that knew his style and system. And now all of a sudden it was plug and play, and everybody knows what that style and system is. So that takes time. Cignetti's immediate flip of the switch is unbelievably unique and almost unprecedented. It's one of the most remarkable stories. There is a danger in life itself. There are always exceptions to the rule. And success comes in living by the rule, not chasing the exception. And in Indiana's case, the Cignetti method and that flip of the switch is the exception to the rule. And methodical and to the core is more often the rule itself. And I think that Barry Odom does do that. I think it's just going to take time. I mean, that's the answer is, I think, simply if you're asking what it's going to take for them to get there, it's going to take time. Do you think Purdue regrets not backing up the Brinks truck for Brom? I don't, because I think it was a foregone conclusion no matter what, he was going to Louisville. Once that job opened up a second time, there was no doubt about it, he was going to Louisville. Speaking of movement, there is going to be some movement. Well, there is. We know for a fact movement. Colton Herta, for example, trying out F2, possibly trying to see what he can do in F1. Alex Palou dominating in IndyCar. And is he on his way to F1 eventually? And how much success could he have there? A couple of the things I want to talk about next with our next guest, who's going to be at Clues Hall coming up in November. He is synonymous with, of course, American increasing popularity in Formula One. And he's Guenther Steiner. He joins us next. You know, Eddie, in racing terms, halfway through a race, they put over a crossed, unfurled flags. You know that, correct, Eddie?
Of course I do, Jake.
Okay. Well, that's exactly what we're doing on the program now. And speaking of racing, and by the way, Elliot Bloom coming up about 30 minutes from now. But joining us now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line, you're going to be able to see him on November 14th, 7:30 at Clues Memorial Hall. That's the Butler campus, of course. Tickets available at butlerartscenter.org. He's a return guest to the program, and there's a lot to talk about, as a matter of fact, and we're going to do it unfiltered with Guenther Steiner, who joins us on the program. Unfiltered Live will be the show coming up November 14th. Guenther, it is a pleasure again. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, and thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, I want to begin with this. You know, it's so much fun because I'm aware of your work in Formula One. That goes without saying. But just in your media work, from both podcasts and then as well, obviously, in Drive to Survive and all of the things that you do. And now, when you come out with the book Unfiltered and you're doing the speaking engagements, what maybe have you learned in terms of, from a race fan standpoint, the things that people find of great interest that maybe surprised you, that you think to yourself, I didn't realize that would be the story that hits, but the thing that jumps out at you?
The thing which jumps out is actually, people, because I know the whole story about everything, with Haas and so on. What jumps out with is people actually don't know about it. And when you tell them, they're very surprised, because it's, as you said, people know me from Drive to Survive, from Formula One, but I did a lot of other things in my life. And they are like, really? Has he done this? And they're always, very surprised. And there is always some good questions from the audience there then as well about the stuff which is not public about me.
With that, do you think of yourself as somebody, obviously racing has been a huge part of your life, and I certainly know, Guenther, from the IndyCar side, the passion that race fans have for racing and its personalities. But do you think of yourself as somebody that is defined by racing, or is racing simply an accentuation that has allowed people to get to know other things about you?
I think it's a mixed bag there. I think it is a combination of both of things, but for sure, racing, it's a big part of me because, I'm doing it since 40 years, I haven't done a lot of things outside of racing or which didn't have an element of racing in it, because that, I would say racing defined me a little bit as a person once I got into racing to be a professional in racing, or as professional as I can be in racing, then it defines you and, whatever I did, it had some element of it involved in it.
Guenther Steiner is my guest. November 14th, 7:30 at Clues Memorial Hall. You can see Guenther up on stage. It is Unfiltered Live. This, of course, an accentuation with his book Unfiltered. Look, you've worked with some of the biggest race teams out there, obviously, right? 8 years as the team principal for Haas Formula One. You're with Jaguar. You did some work with Red Bull. You've worked with Stewart Haas. A little of all areas, right? In doing that, how long did it take you to learn that each driver is their own personality? Maybe one driver, you've got to push button number A, and another driver, you've got to push button number B. How difficult was it to learn and mesh personalities?
It wasn't too difficult to learn because, as I said, I worked with a lot of drivers already when I was young, and you learn pretty quick that everybody got his own way of doing things. And like all of us have got, not only drivers, every person is special, call it like this. So, and trying to adapt to how they think and getting the best out of them, that's always the challenge. How do I get the best out of the driver? How do I have to manage him? How do I have to do it? What does he like? What he doesn't like? So, but as I said, I'm in racing almost 40 years now. So you start off obviously at a lower level, but you learn pretty quick. And then when you get to manage the big boys, I think you are prepared for it, and as good as you can be prepared to manage a human being, because everybody has got is special, in my opinion.
Look, you've worked with, I'll use just, for example, Romain Grosjean, right? So you've worked with him on the Formula One side. You've watched him on the IndyCar side. You've been able to see, and I think to some people, Guenther, there's this thought that there's this huge gap between the two series of Formula One and IndyCar. I'm curious of your perceptions of this. Of first, just how big that chasm may be? And secondly, specifically with Colton Herta now going over and trying an F2 and working his way into Formula One, how big a learning curve, pardon the pun, that will be for him?
I mean, first of all, I was with Romain Grosjean on the Austin Grand Prix. I was doing TV with him for the French network, so it was pretty good. Yeah, as you say, what I always say, all these series are different in itself, and everyone is special. And you cannot assume that the best NASCAR driver is good in F1, but neither is the best F1 driver good in NASCAR. Because it's just it's motorsport, but a different discipline. And if you give somebody enough time, if you've got the driving talent, in whichever series, to do something differently, you can achieve it. And with Colton Herta, I think the approach is right to go to F2 and not straight into F1. I think that approach is good. At least it gives him, the team, the people which want to do this with him, an understanding if he first of all enjoys it, because it's different than IndyCars, F2 and F1. And secondly, how competitive is he? And has he got, does he want to spend the time, maybe 2 seasons in F2 to get to F1? So I think if they give him time, for sure he can get there. But, Colton is not 18 years anymore. So, I mean, time is not for him. So, but if he can have a good F2 year, a respectable, and we should not put our expectations too high for him, because it's difficult to learn F2, and that is nothing to do with the talent of Colton. It's just like knowing the series, getting to know what to do there. And after 1 year, I think the team which he races for will have a good understanding if it can be done that he's going to F1 in a year or two after the first year, because they have got experience with young drivers, with drivers which came from F3 to F2. So if the people listen to them and then they say, hey, Colton just doesn't adapt to this car, then maybe it's time that he does something different. But they say, hey, he's doing good, he just needs another year, I think then it could work.
Which IndyCar driver to you seems to have the acumen that would most immediately translate into Formula One?
I think Alex Palou, he's special. That guy's good. I mean, in my opinion, that guy's very good.
The thing about Palou, to me, working on the radio network and being around it and seeing practice qualifying, you never know what goes on within a driver, Guenther, but he seems to have this very even keel where very few things rattle him and very few things, good or bad, right? He just seems to have how rare is that in a driver, and how important is that kind of even mental approach?
We started last one. It's very important that he's in a good space mentally, so nothing can rattle him, which is very good or bad. I just do my job. I do it the best I can, and go on with it. But I think over the last years, he went through, or he's still going through some, obviously, legal disputes about his career. I think he learned a lot, getting tougher by doing this, and it helped him to be this person which can deal with all the pressures, and that's very important, because if nothing rattles you and you're confident, that makes you a champ. And it's nothing different in Formula One with Max Verstappen. Also, he's very similar in that approach with Alex Palou. Nothing can rattle him. He has got an opinion when he had a bad race. He said what he thinks and moves on to the next one. But it's back to square one. He's calm and everything. And I think Palou is the same.
Guenther Steiner, again, Unfiltered Live, November 14th, 7:30 at Clues Memorial Hall. Tickets available at the Butler Arts Center. That's butlerartscenter.org. Lastly, Guenther, I'm curious your thought on this. In your opinion, which is a bigger jump, I guess, or which is a bigger challenge for someone to learn, let's say somebody with an open-wheel background like from an IndyCar, to learn the nuances of the Formula One car, the standing starts, the different things that go into it, or for a Formula One driver to come over and learn and have to acumen to the ovals that are present in IndyCar racing?
For me, it's about the same. As I said at the beginning, it's a different category, and everybody needs to learn how the car reacts. I think in a Formula One car, the difficulty is the technology, how to use all the tools, we call them, the electronics on the car, how to get the best out of the downforce, what is important. But for me, for an F1 driver coming to an oval, it's also a mental challenge to be this close to walls. You need to get used to it. You're not used to that in F1, and you cannot say I do one race and I get used to it. It takes some time. I think it's exactly the same thing from F1 to move to India, from India to F1. It's a learning curve, and even as I said, if Max Verstappen comes to an oval to the 500, it will not be easy for him. He needs to learn.
Folks, there's going to be a Formula One team based right here in central Indiana. As you know, the Cadillac team right up near Fishers. And as you can see, learning curve, lot to go through. That I'm sure will be one of the subjects that's discussed, as well as hiring, firing drivers, working with different teams. A lot to talk about with Guenther Steiner at Unfiltered Live, November 14th at 7:30. Clues Memorial Hall at butlerartscenter.org for tickets. Guenther, it is always a pleasure. Look forward to talking to you again, and certainly hope you enjoy when you're going to be in Indianapolis here coming up in just under a month.
Thank you very much. I'm sure I will enjoy it, and thanks for having me, Jake.
Appreciate it very much. Guenther Steiner on the program. Elliot Bloom, Purdue basketball coming up just under 30 minutes. That'll be top of the hour. Speaking of IndyCar and Alex Palou, I'll simply say this. If you are a fan of IndyCar or Alex Palou or a fan of the Indy 500 and you're a fan of college football, you probably will like the way the Indiana Hoosiers burst onto the national television scene and the field coming up on Saturday in Bloomington. I will leave it at that and let the parties that be make the official announcement within the next couple of days.
Really?
I'm just saying. A little birdie told me.
Really?
Last night in the NBA, it was a doubleheader to start things off. It was Oklahoma City and Houston. You just heard the fact, of course, the Thunder going to be here tomorrow night. That game you will hear right here on this radio station. And then the Pacers and Minnesota Timberwolves coming up. By the way, that game on Sunday you will hear on this radio station as well. And the Colts game on Sunday will be on our sister station, Hank FM. That's because the Colts have the 4 o'clock start. You had mentioned, Eddie, I thought it was interesting when you and I were chatting earlier today. You watched last night, and there's no doubt that Luka Doncic is, arguably the best player in the NBA. I mean, there are a handful you could throw that into that discussion.
Yep.
And he was virtually unstoppable for the Lakers, but the problem with that is, I don't know, optically speaking, you were pointing out the fact that it's a little redundant, correct?
I was just pointing out the fact, like, if you stayed up and watched that game after the double overtime Thunder Rockets game, you would you notice that Luka Doncic was the LA Lakers. Like, it was just anytime Luka had the ball, it was Luka taking a shot, Luka just driving in. It was just ugly basketball. Like, it was like Harden with the Rockets. Like, it was hard to watch. There wasn't a lot of player movement. There wasn't a lot of ball movement. It was just Luka, chuck it up. I think he ended up taking 27 shots last night. It was just might have been more than that.
He was 17 of 27. He was 2 of 10 from 3-point range.
Yeah. It was just the Luka Doncic show last night.
43 points, 9 assists, 12 rebounds.
And they get down double figures in the second half, and they make it interesting late to make the score look closer than what it was, but it was never really close.
Did he look slimmed down because there was so much talk about him losing weight in the offseason?
I mean, you can certainly see it in his face that he is thinned out a little bit.
Zion Williamson the same, right?
I'm interested to see what Zion looks like, yeah. But I want your thoughts, Jake. I don't know how much of the either game you watched, but in general, I thought the product of Peacock with the production of everything was very, very good last night.
Yeah, it was good. And
it was more about the game than it was previously with TNT. With TNT, it just felt like it was everything around the game.
Well, that's right in my wheelhouse. NBA, NBC, that's totally my wheelhouse, right? Because I go back, the tradition of it, the nostalgic nature of it. And I applaud, and they're not going to do this forever, but it was cool that that NBA and Peacock tapped into that, right? And to awaken that, right there automatically, I feel like it's a late spring day in the mid-'90s, right? It's right in my wheelhouse. So, yes, I did watch. I watched a lot of almost the entire second half of the Houston-Oklahoma City game, which looked – and, yeah, there was a little bit of jokingly a PTSD in watching it because, it was surreal to an extent to watch that and realize it. I think it's just now setting into me like, wait a minute, that really was the finals.
Mm-hmm.
And wow, there's the spot on the floor where the injury happened. And then you started to see some of the things that Oklahoma City did during the finals as well, where Shai Gilgeous-Alexander starts hitting shots, and then, that just starts coming in waves and their transition. And he got off to a very slow start.
I've got a friend who's a degenerate, like define. If you looked up the definition of degenerate in the dictionary, his name would be there. And I'm not going to out him by any stretch of the imagination. But he texted me last night. He goes, "Hey,
it's not Alec, is it?"
No, he was like, "Hey, I see the Thunder are down." And
wait, hold on. Alec is your only friend. Now you're saying there's a degenerate friend. Does he have the over-under, your degenerate friend, on the number of friends you actually have?
No, there's no over-under. But he was asking me, he's like, hey, Thunder going to make a comeback here? I was like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Like, the way that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was operating in the first half, he was going through the motions, wasn't very effective. Houston took him out of the game. It's a couple shots in the middle of the third quarter, and you're like, okay, he's kind of there. And then the fourth quarter happens. Dude just flipped the switch.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, yeah, that's the dude that
when that
led the
mid-range
league in
starts
scoring.
going, it's very difficult to do
man.
anything about it, right?
I mean, his ability to just dissect the defense and what they're presenting defensively and to change speeds, like to slow down and then have the quick burst to get to the basket, the body control that he has to find ways to get open, it's just unreal.
Now, one of the things when you mentioned the coverage for NBC in the NBA, right? The one thing that I saw that jumped out at me.
Was it Michael Jordan's comments that he made at halftime?
I did see that. I don't believe the story at all that Jordan hasn't touched a ball in however long. I don't believe that.
Yeah, I don't either.
No. It was the promotional poster. I'm going to use the term poster in air quotes. The promotional image that NBA on NBC released saying, we're back, and it has like 12 players. And I get it. If Tyrese Halliburton had not gotten hurt, I'm sure he's on that.
Oh, the NBA France tweet. I think that's what you're talking about.
It was a thing promoting the fact the NBA is back on NBC.
Okay.
And they had, the images of all kinds of players. We're back, and it was Luka, and I think Durant was on it, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was on it, and I'm trying to think of the other players that were on it. There were like 10 or 12 players, and there were no Pacers. And I'm like, come on, man. I mean, they were the Eastern Conference champions. But I also get the fact that the Indiana Pacers really only have one transcendent star. Siakam would be one, but Siakam's not like a marketing star from a marketing standpoint. And that's what the Pacers in general, what is so likable about them is exactly that. Andrew Nembhard is an everyday guy. Aaron Nesmith is like an everyday guy. T.J. McConnell's an everyday guy. I mean, that's what is so likable about them. And then Halliburton is the energetic, enthusiastic, like almost like a little kid that's at Little League that's throwing his mitt high in the air at the mound and everybody circles around him and he's the magnet of it all. And I get that he's not there. But when I saw that promotion, I'm thinking, come on, you got to give Indiana a little bit of love here. They were a finalist.
See, I thought you were going with the NBA. I think it was NBA France. They had a tweet like saying, "Oh, look, the season's back" or whatever, and it's like it's got like dozen players on there or whatever. And center of it, Jason Tatum.
Yeah, I mean, come on, right?
Yeah.
Elliot Bloom is with Purdue basketball. Matt Painter was on yesterday, but a lot to discuss in terms of the college basketball getting set to get underway. And we had Elliot on, I believe it was last year. At what point in the year was it that Elliot joined the program? Do you recall?
Give me like 10 seconds.
Director of Basketball Operations, Elliot is for Purdue. I think it was perhaps heading into the Final Four 2 years ago. I can't remember exactly when, but
March 26th of 2025, so 7 months ago.
Okay, yeah. But great conversation and a lot of insight into what goes into building a basketball program, a schedule, and Purdue is going to test themselves aplenty. We will talk to Elliot next. Is backing down really from nobody, nor should they, right? When you look at their schedule and who they have, I mean, they start out with an exhibition with Kentucky, okay? And then after that, and yeah, Indy and Evansville, and I mean that is no slight to those schools. I think Oakland is pretty good out of the Horizon League. They've got that game coming up in November. Then after that, I mean, Alabama, Memphis. You step back out of the conference again, Iowa State, Marquette, Auburn. I mean, it's no joke, that schedule. Joining us now, he is the Director of Basketball Operations for Purdue, Elliot Bloom, on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Elliot, I'm going to begin with that in terms of just the scheduling. You know, I realize that these schedules, how far out are the schedules done? When you guys, you look right now, for example, whether it be playing in Auburn or playing a Marquette, that would have been agreed upon how long ago?
It kind of depends. Some of, like right now, I'm working on next year's schedule as we speak, so trying to get non-conference stuff lined up and figure all that stuff out. Some stuff gets done in advance. Like if you're going to play a home-and-home with a high major, big-time team, that could be a couple years in advance. Just depends. Some stuff is last minute. We've had situations before, like last year we went down to Birmingham and played Auburn, which then they agreed to come back to Indy this year. That was pretty late in the process. So that was like kind of at the start of the season last year, like this time of year into, I think, even in November, December, where we were saying the previous year we were talking about, all right, do we go down to Birmingham? Do we do it late like that? There was a game we played up in Canada a couple years ago. We played Alabama up there and took Zach Edey back to Toronto, and I was trying to get that done over the May, even I think in the beginning of June, until we finally got that done for that coming season. So it just depends.
When you factor that stuff in, a couple of questions about it, because I do find it interesting. The first would be, the style of play of the school, perhaps a previous, existing relationship with the coaches of the staff, or just the schedule in terms of what other schools have open. What are the biggest deciding factors on who you schedule?
For us, I mean, it's changed a little bit over the years. We're at the point now where we're trying to kind of full steam ahead and play as many high-level games as we can. Everybody gets in our league with 20 league games. You get 11 non-conference games. Now that's getting ready to go to 12. So next year they're adding a game. So we'll actually go to 12 non-conference games. So for our standpoint, we like to try to make half of those against high majors. That would be really good competition. That would really kind of help our net. And obviously it helps the net rating that the NCAA tournament committee uses, but it also there's a lot of factors. I mean, you the more quality games in Mackey, the more incentive there is for people to continue to buy season tickets and want to see, those high level games. Obviously helps from just kind of staying relevant nationally and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of reasons to do it. We've kind of chose to make half of our games, our non-conference games, those high-end games like that. But everybody's usually at a different place, and so like we have to find teams that are of like mindset that want to do that, and so that's kind of where it starts. Is like what teams are out there that would like to do these kind of things. There's a big push in our business right now, in our industry, whatever you want to call it, in our sport. The tournament, the MTE world, the Players Era tournament in Las Vegas is drawing in a lot of teams, and so that's really disrupted the market. You're seeing things like the Maui Invitational and Battle for Atlantis. Some of the two of the higher profile kind of preseason tournaments are getting affected by the big monster out in Las Vegas that's taken in so many teams. So that's impacted some things. There's a lot of promoters right now that are doing a lot of neutral events. You're probably seeing more neutral site games than you've ever seen, little one-off games in different cities. So there's a lot of options now where And then home and homes are still, there's a lot to be said for home and homes. Some schools don't look at those as favorably because they think, well, if I go to a neutral site, I can get more money from a promoter if I do that, and there might be other motivations to do it. So you kind of got to find teams that are willing dance partners, so to speak. And then once you get a team that's like, okay, I'll play you, and let's play on a neutral, or let's play home and home. Well, then, yeah, the date's got to work out. I mean,
and how much, like when you're doing this jigsaw puzzle of it, Elliot, how much does Coach Matt Painter sit in with you on that, or is he kind of more of the, hey, I trust what you can put together, let me know who we got? I mean, how much discussion goes back and forth?
Yeah, I mean, Payne and I have been doing it for so long together. It's to the point now where I basically go to him and say, okay, here's our options. What do you want to do? And I try to get some stuff lined up. Now, sometimes if I feel like, hey, I'm having a hard time getting so-and-so to answer the phone, like, can you just reach out to the other head coach and see if they want to play a home and home? And he'll do that from time to time. But for the most part, I'll just kind of take options to him, and we're still pretty old school. I write it out on a blank calendar, and I plug in different scenarios and games, and then we sit down and kind of go over it and say, okay, this is one scenario we could do if we went to this place and then that place and this tournament, what do you think about that? And for the most part, we're on the same page, I would say 99% of the time on what we're trying to do, so it's a pretty easy process for us. There's some schools that it's not an easy process, and those are the ones you don't really want to deal with.
One of the things I like about you, for me, I have problems getting anybody to answer the phone, but you usually do, which I like, right? I mean, so, I appreciate that. I've always thought, Elliot, it's interesting, in the NCAA tournament, I've always felt like the tournament amazes me because, and I'm always intrigued and I find it fun when you just don't know who you're going to get matched up against and what style you're going to see. And you might be playing a team out of a league that plays a completely different style of play of what you're used to. Now, is that an antiquated thought now out of the Big Ten because the conference itself is so vast now that it is diverse enough that you don't really have to worry about that out of conference to prepare yourself for March? Do you get within the Big Ten pretty much the gauntlet sample size that prepares you?
Yeah, for the most part, you're going to get that. Now, you're going to have, I think more than anything, it's giving your players like a reference point or something to draw back on, an experience that they can then recall. So, we're going down to Kentucky, Friday night to play. And, to be honest, we're really hoping that by our guys going through that first travel experience together, because this team hasn't done anything together yet. The new pieces that we've added, it's a brand new team is how we always look at it. So that whole experience, playing in front of a crowd, traveling on a plane for the first time together, all that stuff, we hope that pays dividends a few weeks later when we go down to Alabama and play in Tuscaloosa on November 13th. So those are some things that we try to do. Now, on our schedule this year, too, we play a couple MAC schools that have been traditionally really good. I mean, we play Akron and Kent State, and both those teams, how many times have you seen those teams on your NCAA tournament bracket? And usually those teams are going to be good enough to give some of the higher major teams a run for their money in those first or second round games. So those games that maybe the general fan looks at and doesn't register with them, but we look at those and say, we could very easily see those teams in the first or second round in the tournament.
Oakland's in that same category, right?
Absolutely.
Because even though he loses, roster rotation a lot out of the horizon, they're just really well coached, seemingly, each and every time you go up against them, right?
1,000%. And those are the kind of things that when you get to the tournament and all of a sudden that team shows up on your line, you can sit there. We have a reference point now to go back and say, guys, they're going to be very similar to Akron or to Oakland or to Kent State or some of those teams that you play. There's a couple trains of thought out there in our world. Some people want to schedule really bad teams and run the score up and try to kind of game the system a little bit that way in terms of their net rating. We're kind of the opposite. We'd rather play good quality teams that give our guys a good test and then give them a reference point the rest of the season.
Who most intrigues you? Elliot Bloom is my guest. He's on the Java House P. guest line. He's the director of basketball ops for Purdue. When you look at this roster for you guys this year, Elliot, look, we know of your main trio and the guys that have been around for a long time and have been great players for you guys. Who are you most intrigued by, or who do you think fans will be most intrigued by seeing what they can do for you this year?
There's a few guys. I mean, Oscar Clough, our fifth-year guy that we added from South Dakota State. He's a grown man. He's an elder statesman kind of guy. He's a blue collar, hard hat, lunch pail guy that I think people will be very pleased with. He's got a really good nose for rebounding, can score it around the basket. Really kind of scratches the itch that we had coming off of last season where we had a hard time rebounding. So I think he's probably going to be the most impactful. I also think that Omer Meyer's a guy the Israeli kid that we added that was playing professionally over there. He has a lot of intrigue around him just because of how he kind of blew up on social media and everybody kind of fell in love with him. Really good player. But I also think guys that have been on our roster too that are just a little bit better. Daniel Jacobson, our post guy that was hurt early on last year, our fans only got to see a couple games with him. So, they're basically seeing him as in what he is now as a freshman. Jack Benner comes off a redshirt year. So those two guys are going to play good minutes for us this year, and I think are both going to be very impactful. So, yeah, we got a lot of those names, those household names that have been with us, but we've also got a kind of another wave. And then also, too, like the Jakari Harrises and C.J. Cox that went through the freshman year, seeing that natural growth and progression that you have from your freshman to sophomore year. I think our fans are really going to be pleased with how they've progressed and the level they're going to play at this year.
I thought C.J. Cox last year, Elliot, was impressive in different occasions because you see it a lot more closer than I, so feel free to tell me that this was not an accurate observation. But he seemed like a guy that when his number was called, he was ready for the moment, and he didn't get caught up kind of in the pace in which it was moving. And yet he bought into an understanding of knowing when his role was necessary but not pushing it too much. And that seems to be the Matt Painter Purdue way. Is that a fair assessment of how his first year went?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that you're right, too, to reference Coach, because I think that one of Paint's strengths is that he's able to define roles and let people know that, hey, these guys are going to be our main dudes here in terms of carrying the load offensively, but that doesn't mean that on any given night it's not your time to step up. And so I think that's very accurate. He seemed, he kind of came on the scene against Alabama here, where he just went on that run by himself and blew the roof off of Mackey. All those guys had their individual moments throughout the year. We even made the comment when we were in the tournament, first and second round out in Providence. Jakari and CJ both did some really good things in those games, and we're like, man, for a true freshman to actually be making an impact in an NCAA tournament game, I don't know if people realize how important that is or how valuable that experience is, because that gives them a chance now for the next 3 years to always be able to say, for us to be able to say, look, you guys produced an NCAA tournament game, multiple NCAA tournament games. Like, you got this. Like, a road trip to Iowa, that's not more pressure packed than those tournament games were. So they've set themselves up well to have really good success over the next 3 years.
Elliot, we were talking earlier on the show, and I know that this is not a new story. It's not, in terms of, and not to get you to speak about other programs, but just for the sake for the audience of understanding. So yesterday, or within the last 48 hours or so, Louisville got a recruit. They signed a player that had been already in the G League. Santa Clara has done the same. I know that Tom Izzo spoke out of his concern, not necessarily of these particular circumstances, but and what I was saying was, there is a precedent with the NCAA that when a line is drawn there of what you're going to do in terms of name, image, likeness, or player representation, and in this case, saying, look, somebody's coming from the G League, so long as they have not gone and been drafted, so long as they have not signed an NBA contract, but rather simply a G League contract, and as long as they are still within 5 years of their high school graduating class, they are college eligible. My concern, and I want you to tell me if it's an invalid concern, is that the lines can be blurred so easily, and the precedent says that the individual market is prioritized versus the school market, and the NCAA loses a little bit of grip of power within these circumstances that can snowball. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's the frustration is where we're at now, is that the guidelines and rules keep changing on us, and they change on us midstream. Like, you can go back to when the transfer portal happened, NIL stuff started happening. Then the collectives entered the picture, and now the collectives are they out, and then they're out of the picture, and now we've got the NIL Go platform, which players submit their NIL deals, true NIL deals through, that need to get vetted and approved from that mechanism. Now there's teams out there that are paying players before they actually arrive to campus to get around the NIL Go portal. Now you've got this last situation that you just described. I think that at the end of the day, I think everybody's like ready to get going on a defined, clear set of rules that don't change. We need a period in college athletics, in my opinion. We need a good period of 5 to 10 years where we don't have change and we can just adjust to what we're doing. We spend so much time moving things around and figuring out what the next scenario is going to be, and then you have another group of people who are like, okay, how do we get around this set of rules? How do we get around that? How do we color outside the lines, so to speak? So there's a lot of frustration, and rightfully so. The best way to stay sane in all this is just to take the hand you're dealt and play it to the best of your ability. And anybody in this state who grew up playing euchre, you get ace no face. It's like, okay, I just got to suck this one up and get to the next one. Hope I get a couple Bowers in my hand. I mean, it's one of those scenarios. It stinks when the rules change like they do, and hopefully we get to a point where at some point the NCAA can dig in, define some rules, and we stick with it for a while. And that's a big if, because a lot of these things get challenged in court, and we all know the record the NCAA has in the courtroom over the last few years.
Yeah, and with that, Elliot, I was saying earlier, I have felt for a long time, and this might not be until, I don't know what the time frame of this would be, but am I totally crazy to say that eventually we could get to a point where we have an NBA sanctioned or funded G League that is actually college basketball programs?
Maybe. I doubt we get to that point. I think, to me, the next step down the road is at some point they're going to have to figure out the whole employee thing and the whole collective bargaining thing. If that ever comes into play, and if that is indeed the next step down the road somewhere, where does that even start? How do you collectively bargain? Do you collectively bargain as a conference? Do you collectively bargain as a sport? Does Big Ten basketball collectively bargain? Does Big Ten football separately collectively bargain? Does all of NCAA basketball, how do you do that? And then what do you do with the low majors, the mid majors? Like, how does that all fit together? I mean, there's so many questions. If you sat around, if you went to a bar with your buddies and ordered some beers, you'll be there way past midnight talking about all this, because there's just that many scenarios. So I think that at some point that's down the road. I wouldn't put anything off the table. I think the NCAA's got so much invested now in G leagues, and they finally got to the point where everybody's got a team. They kind of did away with that all-star team, so to speak. And like in the Pacers, example, they've got a team that's got their own arena.
I'm sorry, you're saying the NBA has so much invested in the G leagues, right?
Yeah,
okay.
my bad. And so I feel like that's kind of the path that they are going down, and I think that's kind of a good thing. I don't know if they ever get down to our level. Is there a little bit more cooperation, so to speak, in terms of like, hey, if somebody's played in the G League or the NBA, they're just not eligible anymore? That might get, there might be some more clarity with that. But I don't know if we ever get to the point where we're affiliated with the team or not.
Elliot, the reason that's the other thing that becomes like this wild tentacle off of all this that I was saying is, again, the lines keep getting blurred, to your point, right? The rules keep changing. So do we get to a point, or are we afraid, I guess I should say, of getting to a point where a guy plays at, insert name of program for a year, goes into the NBA, let's even say gets drafted, is on a roster for 2 years and gets completely buried, and then says, you know what, I'm going back to college? That sounds crazy now, right? But my point being, isn't there precedent to say we can't rule out anything at this point?
There's been enough chaos that we can't rule out anything at this point. I mean, if they came through tomorrow with a rule like that, it would shock us all, but it wouldn't. I mean, it would surprise us all, but it wouldn't completely floor you because of all the stuff we've already dealt with. I mean,
Glenn Robinson's got 2 years left, Elliot. Get on the phone, right?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, think about a few years ago when the whole portal thing became where no, a guy can pick up and go wherever he wants. You know, that would have, if you would have told somebody 10 years ago, they would have said, no way, that's not happening. But, lo and behold, a few years later, we're dealing with it. And I think I think at the end of the day, most people on our side of things, we want as much as a student athlete can get. We're all in favor of them, reaping the benefits of playing college basketball, whether that's financially on top of what they do. We want the best for them. But at the same time, it puts us in a pretty tough bind because a lot of this uncertainty doesn't exist at the pro level. There's a lot more restrictions at the professional level in terms of, certain teams can't talk to other teams about contracts, about playing different places. There's a system in place. And I think all we want at the end of the day is just a system. What that consists of can be debated, but as long as we have a more organized system in place, we'll adjust and we'll make it work. But the fact that we don't have that or it changes so often is really what's the frustrating part of it.
And I think we see this. Elliot Bloom, our guest, you mentioned you got a player in Omar Meyer that I believe was playing or was being compensated overseas, right? So.
Correct.
Is that also kind of a wild west of, this guy's playing in like the Premier League and there's some really good leagues overseas, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Where do things, I don't even know, like what is there a parameter on what player you can get out of the overseas leagues?
Yeah, it all comes down to like what was their agreement with those club teams over there and with those leagues. So like in Europe, most kids grow up, they don't play at the public high school. And if you're identified as a player, you're going to join a club. And so like the names that most general casual fans know of, Real Madrid and, Barcelona and all those big teams over there are names. They all have club teams. And so you could be with your club team for 12 years. You could be identified as a 7-year-old. You're really good. All right, I'm playing club. And you're with that team. And then in their eyes, you're going to, as you get older, you're going to matriculate up through the system. And then you're eventually going to play for our top team, which in a lot of those clubs' cases plays in the Euro League, which is the second best professional basketball league in the world. And so that's how they kind of grow their clubs and their leagues. Now, at any point in that time, as long as the contract makes it so where it would work, they can leave and go play college basketball. Now, I'm not well versed enough to know like at what point do you play over there on the main team that's playing in the Euro League. If you're there for like 5 or 6 years, at what point does your window close? I don't know that answer. But a lot of these guys have decisions to make now because of the money that's entered our game. Before, it didn't really wasn't in their best interest. They were going to get paid more money to stay over there anyway. There was a lot to be said for playing in front of your home family and you're playing in your home country, that kind of stuff. And then if you got good enough, then obviously NBA teams could come over and draft you, and that's been the case for a long time now. But now what's changed is with the collectives, especially last year, and now with rev share being a thing, some of these players are realizing that they could go make maybe a little bit more money and get better exposure for NBA teams as well that are coming to our gyms, almost on a nightly basis when we play games to scout guys. So it's really changed some things, and you've got a lot more. You're seeing a lot more international players sign with colleges than you probably ever have, and it's also creating an interesting dynamic because some of these clubs over there aren't so high on the fact that we're coming over and taking players, and so now I think you're going to see a new wave of when these kids grow up in clubs and then play for the professional team over there. Well, they start putting clauses in contracts that say,
Lock
okay,
if
you leave, leave for a college program, you're going to owe this, and it's going to be a big number.
Am I correct that Meyer played either with or against, like Carson Edwards or Trevion Williams, right? I mean, like
with the teammate with Trevion and played against Carson Edwards in the EuroLeague.
So you get cross pollination where then all of a sudden these guys are becoming familiar with, right, and vice versa.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Hey, lastly, Elliot, and I appreciate the time. Elliot Bloom, our guest, the director of basketball operations for Purdue. When for me as a player, and I mean, obviously I was not a college player, but when I played basketball, honestly, my favorite part of the basketball of all of it was away games. Just getting off the bus like with my teammates and seeing like the fans there. There was just this camaraderie that came with it, right? As a fan or as a media member, I think my favorite time is like Selection Sunday when the weather breaks and trying to figure out where teams are going to be slotted and who you're playing and whatever. For you being so intimately involved with it, what is your favorite part of being a part of Purdue basketball?
Probably the road wins, if I'm being honest. I mean, I love it all. I wouldn't be doing it as long as I've done it. If I didn't love it. I mean, I'm all in on what we do, and very fortunate to work with a staff that gets along so well. That makes it fun to go to work every day, and I don't feel like I've ever gotten up and actually gone to a job. But the road wins are like exactly what you just described. Like, we always talk about it. It's usually about 30 versus 15, 16,000, and you're going in with most of the time you're not favored to win a road game. You're going into a hostile environment. And you kind of got to band together with the other guys in that locker room and find a way to get it done. And when you do that, and you sit there, like the best times are like, okay, there's 45 seconds left and the fans are heading for the exits because you're up 12. Like, I don't know if there's a better feeling, and you're kind of whispering on the bench like, hey, they look, they're all leaving. And then you get in that locker room and you celebrate. And you're not just celebrating the win, you're celebrating all the work you put in. You're celebrating all the hours you spent with each other. And, I tell people all the time, people think that, college basketball kicks off in November. Like, not for us. It kicks off in June. We go to work in June when our guys get here for summer school, and we're pretty much with them until April. And so it's the longest season, of college sports. It's got the longest amount of time that you're with each other as a team. And so those moments when you can kind of accomplish things together as a team under some harsh environment kind of situations, those are the most rewarding for me.
By the way, I always forget this. Were you Lapel High School? Is that right?
I went to Mount Vernon.
Mount Vernon, that's right. Now, don't you have the record for like 26 threes in a game at Mount Vernon? Isn't that right?
I made 11 at a game. Coach Howell,
it was when he was at Lapel, he told me about it, I think, right?
Yeah, probably. He was coaching me at Mount Vernon, and then later went to Lapel where he played. And the basket looked about 10 feet wide that night over at Lapel. It was one of those nights where anybody who's ever played, you get in one of those rhythms and the basket looks bigger than it is, and it ended up going my way that night.
You had 11 threes. How many did you take?
I took 19.
That's not bad, because it'd be one thing if you're like, well, I was 11 of 47. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly. Well, I look back at the amount of threes I took in some of those games. I gotta buy Coach Howell a couple extra dinners here, because letting one guy shoot 18 or 19. I had 21 3-point attempts in one game one time. And I was like, holy cow, like now, when you're in it, you don't realize. Then you get around the game and you get to this level and you sit back and go, 21 3-point attempts in one game for one person. That's insane.
See,
but
I had that many, I think, in one game because I couldn't learn the offense. So I was like, you know what? If the ball came my way, I'm like, it's going up. I have no idea where I'm supposed to go with it.
Better than a turnover. Like we always say, you can rebound a shot. You can't rebound a turnover.
Good way of saying it, right? All right, so Purdue gets underway against Kentucky. Elliot Bloom, that is an exhibition game coming up on Friday night. Elliot, I'd love to have you back on the show, man. I always appreciate it, and I always enjoy the conversation.
No, anytime. I like listening to you guys, and you guys are always treat us well, so appreciate it.
Appreciate it very much. Elliot Bloom from Purdue Basketball, the Director of Operations on the Java House, Peel and Poor Guest Line. Lots of Java House locations up in Lafayette, by the way. Another recruiting tactic for Purdue, perhaps.
I know he said a lot of good stuff in there, Jake, but I'm going to be so confident to say this, that the favorite part or the best part of the interview was the fact that he made an analogy when explaining something and put it in terms in which that you can understand it. The euchre analogy was fantastic.
Now, euchre's the one where when you have, what's funny? It's been a long time since I've played euchre. I mean, who doesn't in Indiana play euchre, right? Isn't that, though, sometimes where you have a teammate and you go alone?
Yes.
The teammate's like, I'm going alone on this one. Yeah. That always happened to me.
Oh, of course.
I know it's shocking. It's shocking that whoever I was with, even if they had a bad hand, they're like, no, dude, I'm going alone here, right?
Kind of like your email address, 2 things that you love the most, you, Jake Query,
My
and
email
me.
address is jakequery@me.com. My 2 favorite people, baby. Huge fan here of Elliot Bloom. I just think his perspectives and insight, and I really appreciate, truly do, the overall I'll say transparency for lack of a better word, but
yes,
and access of Purdue basketball especially with this radio station. I mean, obviously the relationship that Matt Painter and JMV, have had and developed over the years on the air, and Elliot, PJ Thompson, I mean, on and on. Very, very much appreciated.
It's pretty you don't see it often anymore in sports, Jake, professionally or at the collegiate level, where people in some major power making decisions are so transparent, as you put it, and open about how they operate things and how they want to answer things. Like, they usually just give you like the standard,
totally.
I mean, walled up.
I think the way that Purdue does it is so impressive because not only are they, ranked number 1, right? But and continue, they just have roster continuity. But Eddie, they seem to have this thing of like, yeah, well, you know what? Like, those in glass houses should not throw stones. And in Purdue's case, it doesn't matter because they have a glass house because they're like, yeah, I mean, feel free to look in on what we're doing.
Yeah.
We have a way we do it. We believe in the way we do it. And we go out and do it. There you go. And even though they have not won a title, it feels as though for the last 5 to 10 years that they're the best program in college basketball. Certainly, I mean, Connecticut obviously is way up there, but the downs for other programs don't feel, it doesn't feel like Purdue's dips are that big a dip.
Right.
They just are constantly there.
Like last year, for example, is a quote unquote dip, and what, they made it to the Sweet 16?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly. And in getting beat by Houston here, I mean, they were right there with them they played really well.
Yeah.
That was a darn good team they lost to.
I'll be fascinated to see how things change once that breakthrough happens. Like, it's inevitable with how dominant they've been.
That once they win one, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
How does it change, like, their perception and how they're viewed at the national level?
Fair. Yeah, that's a good – I mean, I think one of the things that hurts is the wrong word. But, to a lot of people of a certain age group, Purdue, I think everyone knows it's a Big Ten school, right? I just think that there are a lot of people outside of Indiana that probably aren't totally sure where it is.
Yeah.
And then also – you'd have to be even older than I, but there are some people, believe it or not, that still probably think of Purdue as like, the cradle of quarterbacks football types. It kind of even between football and basketball as opposed to a dominant in one sport or the other.
Because, like, to me, if they continue on this path that they're currently on and, they make it to a handful of Final Fours, they make it to the, championship game like once in every 3 years, then I don't want to put them in this category, but then you're like Gonzaga of the Midwest. Yes.
No, that's fair. I mean, Gonzaga is another one. They are fascinating because for so long there was it just seemed inevitable that they were going to jump into a bigger conference or whatever else, and they're like, hey, we're just here to sit and hang out and then get beat by St. Mary's every year. And our boy Randy Bennett, right?
It's always like in those games, like whoever wins the regular season game
exactly correct.
Loses the tournament.
That's
game.
Exactly correct.
Kind of like how you predict, for the college football playoff, Indiana.
I'm telling you,
lose the Big Ten championship game to Ohio State and then come back in the CFP and win.
I get this message, okay? I get this message yesterday, and I'm just like,
is it a troll? Jake?
No, it's a guy I know and like a lot, but he lives in Ohio, big Ohio State fan. Jake, I'm going to give you my conspiracy theory for Indiana and Ohio State. We're going to meet up in the Big Ten championship game, and we're going to let Indiana have the win. We don't want to show off everything we have for you guys and save it for the playoffs since we'll most likely meet again there. You're right. Ohio State is going to back off, and if they lose, let's just set the table now. To which I replied, of course, why wouldn't Indiana do the same thing? I'm telling you, Ohio State fans don't want to admit it. Indiana's really, really, really good. Ohio State's very good. They are exceptional. They have outstanding players and talent at the receiver position, notably. But don't sleep on Indiana. And I'm telling you, Indiana is going to lose to Ohio State in the Big Ten title game. and then Indiana is going to beat Ohio State in the national title game.
Imagine if it was the other way around and Indiana loses to Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. Like, that loss means more to Ohio State than if Indiana loses to Ohio State in the Big Ten tournament.
That's fair.
Championship game. Because all those Ohio State, fans are going to be calling for Ryan Day. You lost to Indiana.
Well, and of course we have to.
You lost to Kurt Signetti.
We have to keep in mind that Ohio State's going to be entering that game coming off of loss to Michigan for like the 5th straight year.
Yeah.
Okay, World Series is actually. I'm surprised by this. It feels now like all this momentum, and for me, I mean, and I haven't slept as a Blue Jays fan, and anxiously awaiting this.
That's why you've had 2 cups of Java House coffee today.
That's exactly correct. I mean, I'm all in, right? And so you know what? I've actually thought about this
using code Jake25 to get 25% off your order on JavaHouse.com.
Yeah, that is correct. I've thought about this.
How cool is it, by the way, that you could use your own code to save you money?
It is pretty awesome. And I do purchase from JavaHouse.com. Now, Dodgers and Blue Jays games 1 and 2 Friday and Saturday. I think my buddy Michael and his band The Elect are at the Rathskeller Beer Garden coming up on Saturday. And
you're not talking about our buddy Michael
best.
from Australia?
No,
down under?
Not Australian Michael. Michael from The Elect.
Do we know how he's doing, by the way? We haven't chatted about him lately.
Michael in Australia?
Yeah.
He's doing.
Pacer season about to start.
Oh, believe
How's he
me.
doing?
He's sending me the videos already of how much he's anticipating, and he's expecting 55 wins this year. But if it weren't for the fact that The Elect was playing at the Rathskeller on Saturday, I honestly think I might go to Toronto. Take in game 2.
Get me some ketchup chips on the way.
Yes. Go over there. Drive. I could drive. It's 8 hours. Go to the game. Drive back Sunday. Like, let's go. I'll leave at 10 in the morning. Stop just enough time to stop at Roots. Get some ketchup chips. Take in game 2. What are tickets going for, do you think?
That's a great question.
What's or better yet, if I get a room in Skydome to overlook the outfield, okay? How much would there's no way you can get a hotel room in Skydome right now. There's only like so many of them that overlook the stadium anyway. We're going to look it up. Game 1 or 2 for the World Series, what is the get-in price right now? The best part about it is with the exchange rate, it's free, basically.
I've seen the prices. I've already cheated.
All right, I want you to tell me on the other side. Okay, Eddie, now keep in mind with the exchange rate, it's everything's basically free in Canada. Matter of fact, we're not far away from where you go, and they just pay you to take stuff. Okay. But having said that, the World Series game 1 or 2, I don't know if there's a difference in price between games 1 or 2. But the get-in price, I'm going to say this. I've been to, I think Rogers Center is what it's known now, Sky
Yes.
Dome. I've been to games there. It's it's a big stadium, whatever. $290 is my guess for the top, far right fields, worst seats you can get.
There is a whopping $17 difference between game 1 and game 2 in terms of price.
Okay, so $307 for game 2.
You're not even close.
Okay, go ahead.
Game 1, $647. Game 2, $630.
That seems steep. Telling you now. Here's the thing, though. With that exchange rate, that comes up to $25, right? 25 American. J&V has arrived. It is time for the crossover. Brought to you by the good guys at Love Heating and Air. Right now, look outside and you're thinking, okay, furnace, let's go. Want to get that clean checked? 317-353-2141 is the telephone number. love-hvac.com. It is not often when John comes in that he is intently looking at his phone, but it appears as though he's intently
I was checking out what time I'm going on Sunday right here and where. I want to make sure.
Would you like to read the big announcement there that they've given to us?
Why don't you do it? You've read over it.
Do you happen to have the breaking news sounder, Eddie? Programming notes for all of you. This Sunday, the Colts and Tennessee Titans will be available on our sister station, 97.1 Hank FM. The ride to kick off with J&V and the Colts pregame huddle will be available on 93.5, 107.5 The Fan, the station where you're hearing my voice right now, starting at 12:30. The Fan will have the Pacers at Minnesota with Mark Boyle, Eddie Gill, and Pat Boylan, and all the action beginning at 6:30 right here on The Fan. If you're saying to yourself, well, wait, there's a huge gap there, it's because, and John, it's going to be literally Friday afternoon before it registers to me. This is a late game,
Yes.
a 4 o'clock start for the Colts on Sunday.
That's
Not
good,
the
too.
typical.
Little hoop can be played now on Sunday morning. So
That
that's
is
good,
correct.
man.
That is correct. Of course, again, you've got the pregame at 12:30, right? Right. to kick off at
12:30. We'll start
12:30.
at the bullseyeeventgroup.com Colts VIP tailgate.
What is lined up on your big show for today?
We will do Omar Cooper Jr., the former Lawrence North standout, multi-sport athlete who is having a great season for IU as a wide receiver, and has a great story about how he almost left and why he didn't initially leave when Curt Cignetti took over and they changed coaches. Really good story.
He had a play against Oregon that I just thought was so like the perfect summary of Curt Cignetti in this Indiana team, and the fact that he had kind of a one-handed grab, but then he comes down, John, and he realizes he makes a spin, catches himself with his left hand to keep himself balanced, and has the presence of mind to know that he's still like 2 yards shy of the first down marker and lunges forward to it with his body spinning. That awareness and ability to make that play is just with Curt Cignetti's team. It just feels like that's the way this Indiana football team has been playing, right? Is just that overall awareness is so impressive.
They may have the best trio of wide receivers in college football. Maybe.
Yes. I mean,
We've talked about this before. Who are your favorite all-time wide receivers for IU?
Rob Turner.
Loved Rob Turner. North Central grad, right?
No, Chittard.
Chittard.
Yeah.
Bummer.
Well, I mean, if you're going that route, I'd have to say Dwayne Gunn.
Yes.
But no, I would say Rob Turner. I mean, Ernie Jones
Ernie
goes without
Jones
saying.
was great.
He should have won the Heisman in '87.
Thomas Lewis.
Boy, Scotty McGowan's up there. Thomas
Scott.
Lewis, that 99-yarder he had against Penn State, or was it not a 99-yarder against Penn State, but darn close. I
Did
think he still
LeBron
has
Williams
the
turn
record.
into a wide receiver there, too?
He did, didn't he?
Well, LeBron Williams. Evansville Bossy High School.
He was
LeBron.
another one. LeBron and Antoine Randall were quite the duo there for sure.
Yeah.
I didn't like, though. Now, here's my one thing about Indiana football. And this, admittedly, 100% guilty as charged. This is an age bias, okay? I wish they would go back to the Mallory era, almost maroon-looking helmets with the white block eye. I know they wear them occasionally.
Yeah.
But I love that look, man. Love
I
it.
do, too. Like, is that like the almost even prior to Mallory, Tim Clifford, that look?
Yes.
The breaking away practice. Well, remember they're laying there
That's
on the
right,
side of the
watching
bank,
it, right?
watching IU practice.
And do you remember when Sam Weich in his 1 year decided to change it to truly like cream and crimson, and then the IU with the streaking U down the side of it, and that was a disaster. Then he went to the Bengals, and that was the end of it.
You remember the bowl, the first bowl Mallory's team played in?
That would have been the All-American Bowl where Sammy Smith of Florida State ran all
There you
over
go,
him.
man. The
Right?
Sammy Smith reference right there.
236, I think he went for in that game.
Yeah, he's still running, I think, now.
Mallory went to, here we go, All-American Bowl, went to the Peach Bowl twice, went to the Liberty Bowl, went to the last one was the Pull-On Weed Eater Independence Bowl, and then also the Copper Bowl, now the Insight.com Bowl.
Let's give a shout-out to Gary Harris listening right now. Gary Harris Sr., by the way, not Junior. Gary Harris Sr. says Courtney Roby.
Courtney Roby's a really good one.
Another one right
Another
there.
North Central guy.
Mm-hmm.
Good time.
Gary Harris.
Player
Have you ever met Gary Harris?
I don't know that I have, actually.
One of the greatest dudes of all time. I'm blowing so much sunshine up his rear end right now. He's going to love it. And I'm assuming I'll see him tomorrow because he always goes to Joe's Grill and Fisher's.
For that matter, Gary Harris Jr., pretty darn good wide receiver, right?
We kind of wonder, right? He's had this great career as a professional playing basketball, but you kind of wonder, wide receiving wise, what
Great
could
player.
have been. He was
player.
talented.
All right, John's up next, and we will be back with you at noon tomorrow.
Yep.
I thank you for listening to Query & Company.